If you like this video, please give it a thumbs up and hit the subscribe button as well as the bell to be notified of future videos. Thank you.
Hello Internet, we are back. We've got Denis Coyne here. Wonderful fellow, I must tell you, he's more famous than what he realized. Wherever I was going with my tour here in South Africa, I mentioned his name. And you know what, there's people who say they actually remember him and know him. Which is a good thing and a bad thing, I suppose. But Denis, you are very welcome here. Thank you. This is the second episode. Up to now, we spoke to you. You got to the army. You went through basics. It was a fantastic episode. I want to tell everyone, if you missed that one, please go back and look at it, because the man spoke like a real trooper, like a real troopie. And that is the way it was. It is authentic. It is for real. This is it. And now today we're going further. Now you're out of the army. You've done your service, but the army is not done with you, because it's going to now start calling you up for camps, things like that. And I just want to say to people, I'm recording from Pretoria. The internet is not as fast as Switzerland, and the light might not be as good as normal. Please forgive me. It's not Denis's fault. We're doing the best we can do. And I'm close to a busy, what I used to know, some busy highway, some busy rail. But now it's some other name. I don't even know what it is. So anyway, just bear with us. Just bear with us. Denis, thank you, mate. It's over to you. We're listening.
Good morning, Chris. Yes, thanks again for the opportunity to share my story. We finished off last week when we just returned back to 6-1 at Omitia after Operation Smoke Shell. So as you can imagine, we were happy to have a shower and get back to the comfort of our tents. A bit of partying took place. And yeah, we just shared our memories from the operation and remembered the fallen, which was a good time. And then we on early July of 1980 we got our first 7 days pass from the border. So it was wonderful. Went home obviously, and if I remember, my birthday's in August, and my mother, whilst moving home, organized a 21st birthday party for me, which was fantastic, and quite a few of my mates came along, and yeah, just another time to celebrate. And then of course it was back to the border, and shortly after we got back to the border, they sent a group of us back to Pretoria to fetch new rattles, which I believe were going to be transformed into command vehicles. So yeah, I think there were about 12 vehicles, and we drove in convoy down to back to Grootfontein. En route, we had petrol restrictions in those days, and we arrived in Keetmanshoop too late to fill up. So we spent the weekend there, and they allowed us to park at the rugby stadium on the field. And we got to know a few of the locals, and in typical, of a small town in southern Africa. On the Sunday morning, this tiny auntie arrived with rusks and coffee for us all, which was fantastic. And she invited us all for lunch and served us all a roast lunch, which was really fantastic. And then we moved, filled up on the Monday, and then moved off to Grootfontein. So the last period at Omitia was relatively quiet, and we did basic stuff, working around the camp, standing guard, odd patrol, the base maintenance. We started building a swimming pool, and we actually completed it. And when we started filling it up, we noticed the next day that there were some elephant tracks around the pool. And being close to the Etosha Pan, there was quite a lot of wildlife. And we built a diving platform, and 2 of the guys went and slept on the diving platform at night, and they were woken up in the early hours with an elephant staring them eye to eye, which was quite amazing. So we played soccer, and we had a sports day down in Tsumeb which was quite exciting. I played rugby, and I got smashed into the ground, and I had a big grass burn down the side of my face, which wasn't very pleasant, but yeah, it was fun, and all had a good day. And then yeah, back to camp. And then at some stage we got an emergency call for a potential ops, and A company was at 6-1 at the time, and we raced off to Oshakati. Spent, I think, about 2 days there, and then nothing happened, so we went back to base. We then did a patrol, I think, just to get us out of the base and keep us busy. They sent us on a patrol north of Etosha Pan, and we went east in an easterly direction, very flat, open, and quite amazing. We came across, the odd kraal in the middle of nowhere, and little flat water pans where they were actually trekking for fish. Little fingerlings, really, that they were collecting, and I presume they mashed them into their pup or something like that. But just interesting to see how the locals were living out in that part of the world. Another eventful evening at 6-1. The then Captain Smith, Bob Smith, who later became a general, he took over as the officer commanding, and one night somebody threw a bucket of water over him in his bed. So he pulled his rifle out onto the parade ground, and he got the entire base out on the parade ground, and with his spotlight on, and asked somebody, whoever did it, to come forward. Nobody came forward, so we spent the entire night on the parade ground with sandbags and did a bit of extra PT, and we later found out it was actually one of the corporals that had done it, but he never came forward. And then the following day, straight after that, we had to do what they call a stable parade. That's clean out all the vehicles, service them, pack up all the equipment, and had an inspection. So yeah, after that day and night, we were all quite tired. Another fun time, we got chased from the base down to the main road. The whole company with tow bars, and en route, a couple of us were chirping and had a few things to say to the rank. And when we got back, they pulled a couple of us aside, and we got a bit of extra sandbag PT, which was also no fun. Yeah, and then we hit our 40 days. 40 days left in the army is always a big thing. As you can imagine, a huge party. I think we all went and bought a case of beer and put it under our beds. Yeah, lots of fun and games. I remember there were two brothers who did basics with me. One was a Free State boxer, and the other one was a Free State wrestler. And I was not their greatest fan, and they after a few drinks came down to our lines at anti-tank and were looking for me. And fortunately, I had a couple of big boere farmers in my platoon, and they sent them packing and said, "Leave Coyne alone." So yeah, and then we came the day where we finally finished our year at 6-1 Mech, and went down to Grootfontein, spent the night there, and then the following day flew back to Bloemfontein. We were well received at Wansai. Unfortunately, Bravo Company hadn't got back yet, so they couldn't release us. So we went on a long weekend pass. Cape Town guys, we all on the way back, we met at the station, and we came back in two car loads. Unfortunately, the car behind us had a head-on accident, and the driver, Aiton Bogart, was had a lot of brain damage and was killed in the accident, which was really tragic. A really tragic way to finish off our 2 years of national service. Yeah, that was really sad. Anyway, we eventually clawed out on the 18th of December, finished national service. And I must say that for me, it was a huge anticlimax. You know, you're expecting something great, but it's just never happened. And I think it was just the fact that you'd spent 2 years with a bunch of guys and got to know them like brothers. And that was it, done and dusted, and off you went home, you know, to start your civilian life again. So Christmas, of course, being great, being at home with the family and everything. I started my first job on the 7th of January at a sawmill in a town called Grabouw, just outside Cape Town. That was a very lonely year for me. So I struggled a bit, I think, just not being surrounded with close friends and stuff, and just, yeah, it was a difficult year. Yeah, just to say that, you know, since national service, and I think with the advent of Facebook and WhatsApp groups building up, we, as a group of guys, eventually all got together, and I know there were a few guys that were going up to Bloemfontein every year to commemorate Smoke Show on the 10th of June. However, I only went about 10 years ago for the first time, and I went then, and a couple of years later, so we went up. We had a parade, which was fantastic, you know, organized by the guys in Bloem, who you now have a club called Amateur, which I think you might have visited, in Bloemfontein at 1SSB. They've given them a bungalow to use, which is fantastic. So they have regular monthly meetings. Other than that, in Cape Town, we've had what we call SCOA skis, where guys get together and, you know, for a dinner or something. And in the last year actually last year, in between COVID, last year, April, our anti-tank platoon got together in the Free State. I'm just trying to remember the town, which was fantastic. You know, after 42 years of not seeing some of the guys, it was like we'd left each other a year ago. It was, for the entire weekend, we couldn't stop talking. It was unbelievable. And, you know, I've heard guys from 3-2 and other units talking about the exact same thing, and it's just amazing that the sort of brotherhood we built up during our national service, and then later on in camps. Yeah, so I did my camps with the regiment Groot Karoo, which was a mechanized unit. I did my first camp in about February, March 1981, so pretty soon after I'd done national service. It was just a 1-month camp at 7th Mobilised Division at the Brug, just maintaining vehicles. 1982, I did a camp at Lohatla. We were doing big brigade attacks with entire battalions and tanks, artillery, everything. I remember the first night being the first attack being a bit of a circus, finding our place in the field, and it went on much later than expected. And as a driver, I was driving an infantry vehicle, and I had night sights on, and my batteries ran out at about 3 o'clock in the morning. So I couldn't see, and I drove into a hole that swallowed up the whole raft. It was a massive hole, and I was driving my platoon commander, who was obviously connected to the entire brigade, and I heard somebody come over and crapped on his head and told him to sort his driver out. And without realizing it, during the evening, the toggle on my headset had got stuck down. So I was tired. It was like 4 o'clock in the morning. So I said to him, tell whoever it was to go and get knotted. And it went over the whole network. So I wasn't too popular for that. And then back to Civvy Street, 1982, 1983. They sent me to a sawmill at Stellenbosch, and so I spent 2 years in Stellenbosch. It was fantastic, and I played water polo for the university, and I met a girlfriend there. He was studying ethnology. It was a good year, and 1983 was also a fun year for me. 1983, I did my 3rd camp, and that was a border camp. And we got called up for an operation called Dolphin. So initially we went by train up to De Brugge, where we did our medical, got kit, rifles, etc. Went into going to draw vehicles. No, we didn't draw vehicles from there. They flew us up to Grootfontein, and we picked up our rifles in Grootfontein. There were a group of us from Smoke Shoal who we formed our own section, and which was so we were call sign 11 Alpha. Platoon A company, platoon 1, and so that was great having one of the guys, Gavin, brought up a tape deck, and we installed it in the rifle, and so we had music in the bush, a bit like the movie Kelly's Heroes. I don't know if you've ever seen that, but we thought we were super cool, crashing through the Angolan bush with with music pumping through the headsets. But once we picked up our vehicles at Grootfontein, we moved up to Oshivelo, I think for about 2 weeks training. There was actually an Israeli officer who took us just for a day, giving us some basic suburban warfare training. So I'm not sure if I thought that we might end up going into some of the Angolan villages, but yeah, that was quite interesting. Anyway, we eventually moved into Angola, and we spent 6 to 8 weeks sweeping an area sort of south of Kuvalai, and between Kuvalai and what's the town called? Excuse me. Ongiva. Yeah, so there was Kuvalai, Mupa, Ongiva, that area. And it was kind of different for us, coming from a pure mechanized background, because on occasions we would log the vehicles, and then the sections would go out on foot patrols. And on the one foot patrol, they found spoor, and they tracked a guy, and they chased him to a kraal, and going into the kraal, one of the guys got taken out, which was unpleasant. And obviously they cleaned up the kraal and the guy that was there, and yeah, and then had to come and Kasavak. His name was John Olivier, which was quite sad. So after that, it was pretty uneventful. We carried on sweeping areas, looking for SWAPO. We moved up to Mupa mission station. But I remember the one night also in a lager, we did what I think they call a show of force, and we elevated all the cannons, 20 more cannons, and we had some anti-aircraft on the back of Buffles, I think, or Psalm 20s, and then the mortars shot up 1,000-foot flares, and then the cannons opened fire mainly with tracer, and so it was like huge fireworks, this massive display of fire at night time, which was quite interesting. We were then sent to an area just below Kuvala, where they believed there was an arms cache, a swap arms cache, and we moved off into that area. We had a brief contact.
Yeah, so as en route to the area south of Quito to look for the arms cache, I was in front window bashing for the company, and we came into an area between a big set of kraals on the left-hand side, and I saw, as I was going to go through a set of bushes, I saw some old tracks to the left, which I swung into, and immediately I knew that I'd done the wrong thing. It was like a sixth sense kind of, I just knew that this was going to be a problem, and there was just this almighty explosion, and I thought we'd been ambushed, and I thought I'd been shot at by an RPG. So my initial reaction was just to hit the hydraulic handles on the doors and open the doors so that the section could get out and to defend us. Obviously, my ears were ringing, there's a lot of dust, and then I opened the doors, and then I heard my section leader shouting at me, "Close the doors! Close the effing doors!" And which I did. I then closed the doors and started coming to my senses, and I then realized what had happened was that we'd actually hit a landmine, which I think was a single cheese, I'm not sure. And the reason he shouted at me to close the doors was because obviously there might have been other mines, anti-personnel mines planted around, so we had to, the whole column came to a stop. We waited for the engineers to come forward. They cleaned the area, and then the Tiffies came in and hooked us up, and we pulled into a lager nearby, and within a couple of hours, they had the wheel off, the axle hadn't been damaged, and I was up and riding again. And just the amazing work that the Tiffies did for us in all mechanized infantry operations, cross-border and during training. They were magnificent.
And then UNITA, we met up with UNITA, and they actually dropped off 2 prisoners, which one of the HQ vehicles took back to I'm not sure, maybe on Dongwa. And while we were in that area, we were Battle Group Bravo, and there was another Battle Group Charlie, which had a lot of I think they had some 6-1 company, infantry company, and they had armored cars. And for some unknown reason, the armored cars drove almost right into Kuvala, and they had to get out of there very quickly because it was Kuvala was there was a FAPLA company based there. Anyway, that caused a bit of drama, and FAPLA fired off a couple of salvos of rockets at us, which fortunately were off target. We moved down a bit. We pulled into a lager, and then the following morning, the sections went out on patrol, and they either crossed the Kuvala River or they were busy crossing it. And they walked into a massive ambush and mortar fire, and we had to pull out, and we lost another guy there, and we had about 17 guys injured. So we had to get them all in and then move south, where it was safe for Pumas to come in and castle-back the guys. Just another interesting thing, during this camp, when we were obviously higher up than we had been told to go, and I don't know if it's true, but the story was that we'd been picked up on satellite by CIA, and we'd been instructed to move back south again. So whether that was true or not, I don't know. Yeah, after we got hit, the OC from Sector 10, I can't remember who it was, a commandant, came and gave us a pep talk. And the guys were extremely negative. I think a lot of us felt like we're, bashing around the Angolan bush, sweeping and not coming up with much was a waste of time. And so the guys really had a gutsful, and then losing a couple of guys and a lot of injured guys, all we wanted to do was go home. Anyway, they said that the following day we were going to sweep through the area where we believe the ambush had come from, which we did. The whole company, line abreast in Rattles, and I think 44 para were with us, and they were on the ground. And we swept through, but there was nothing that we came up with. So after that, we moved out, and we moved down to Angola, where we spent a night. En route, we traded some stuff with a couple of locals, and we traded stuff for a cow, which some of the farmer boys slag first, and the next day on Jiva, we sat and we spent the whole day just riding this cow and talking and just having fun. From a personal point of view, on that camp, it was a different environment, because a lot of our platoon commanders were traditional or light infantry, I think you would call them, and used to doing counterinsurgency work, and so working with Rattles was different for them. And so there was, I said, a bit of conflict in terms of mechanized and light infantry way of operating. We then moved back to Oshivelo for a few days. I remember they came around and said, who hadn't received their pro patria medals yet. So put our hands up, and they came out. We were having a braai one night, and they came around literally with a box of medals and ribbons and said, who put their hands up, and they handed them out. We put them together, and then the following day they had a parade and presented them to us. After that camp, we actually drove the vehicles back to De Brugge, which was quite a trip. I remember coming through Kimberley at about 6 in the morning. So that was beginning of winter, and it was ice cold. I remember having a blanket around me while I was driving, and the Rattle, it's not airtight, so you got wind coming in everywhere. It was freezing. And so it was back to Bloem, and then back home again, back to civvy life, and you just go from being in the bush back to the office, sort of thing. I had my girlfriend at the time, who had written to me and sent me photos of herself and everything. When I got back, she broke up with me, so that was a bit upsetting. And she said to me, she was an Afrikaans girl, and she said to me, the guy that she'd met, who was a local chemist, had said to her that apparently the English-speaking guys on the border used to mix with the local woman, and she didn't enjoy that. So I said, no, I don't know where he got that from, but anyway, so we split up, and life moved on. Yeah, and that was 1983. I think I was struggling as a human, as a person, socially and that kind of thing. I used to binge drink, and I struggled to communicate with people. And I'd been with the Sawmill group for about 2.5 years, and I was employed as a production trainee, and I was supposed to have gone to Tech at some stage to do a wood technology course, and this never ever happened. And I got a bit tired of everything, and later that year, which was silly of me, I should have gone and spoken to someone. I typed out a letter and gave it to my production manager, and I suggested that they weren't going to train me, then rather give me a position and pay me more than they were paying me, and either that or get rid of me. So they got rid of me, which was interesting. So I spent a month working for a local builder at home, and then later that year, a friend of mine was going traveling, and he said to me, why don't I join him? Which is what I did. And in December '83, my mate Rob and I headed off to the United Kingdom, and then we spent about 5 days there, and then headed off to California, where his girlfriend and a friend were living on the yacht and working. So I spent 1984, 1985 traveling the world. First 6 months in the United States, and then I was working on a motor yacht in Fort Lauderdale, in Florida, and they were going back to Europe. So they took me along as a deckhand, which was amazing. So I got an opportunity to cross the Atlantic Ocean. And I got to Europe. I traveled in Europe. I spent the winter of '84, '85 in the United Kingdom. Then I went back to Europe, and I ended up off my travels on a kibbutz in Israel, where I spent a couple of months, which was a fantastic experience. And then I back to London, and then back home. And I started work January '86 with a company called PG Timbers, who were quite well known back in the day. I moved into a commune, just a house with 6 people, 6 of us. And one of my housemates was a guy called Chris Walls, who was also ex-61E. He was the year after, so they did and so we had a lot to talk about and share about, and our camps and that type of thing. And that, '86, '87, I did no camps. 1988, I got called up for a 3-month border camp to do Operation Packer. This time we met at the Brug again, the same thing, went through medical, got all our kit and everything, but we actually received our vehicle, drew our vehicles in Bloem at the Brug, and we actually drove up to Grootfontein, and then Osjevela, I would imagine, for training again. And then we went up we crossed, I would imagine, about 2 weeks training, and then we went up crossed to Rundu and went into Angola. I was designated to platoon 1, A company again, and I was the platoon commander's driver again, 20 more rifles. During our training at Osjevela, I remember there were a couple of doctors that come up with us, campers, and they spoke to us about severe trauma injuries and how to deal with it and that kind of thing. So things were obviously quite bad is, you know, where we were heading off to. We obviously coming straight out of civilian life, you know, it takes a while to get your head back into the game, so to speak. So yeah, that was a bit of a shock. You know, I remember the one guy telling us, you know, how to deal with a stomach wound, and if, you know, you're literally telling us to literally put your hand into the wound and find the artery, you know, to stop the bleeding, that kind of thing. So it was a bit of an eye opener. Anyway, as I said, we crossed over at Burundi and headed up, and we were heading up towards Quito Carnival. And on our there was a road that had been basically built into the middle of the road by rifles moving up and down since early 1987. And en route in, we passed the National Service guys moving out, 6 guys from 6-1 Mech. And I remember being absolutely shocked at how weary and battle they all looked. And that was a huge shock. You know, they'd been in the bush for, I think, for something like 6 months. And it, you know, it was really quite a sight. I do remember, you know, those roads it's very thick sand, and the rifle becomes like a bit like a ship. So you're kind of drifting through the bush, and in this convoy. And I remember one day, this was before I'd given my life to Christ. You know, I went to church as a child, but I didn't really know much more than that. And I remember asking God to keep me alive, because, you know, I was 28 years old, and I just thought there's no ways I could lose my life now. You know, I hadn't even met my wife or had kids or anything like that, and, you know, I wanted a long and good life. And so yeah, so we officially became part of Operation Packer, which was 2 long months in the Angolan bush, sort of probably, I'm not sure, maybe 50 k's east of Quito Carnival. Obviously camouflage and lagers. We, you know, wherever we pulled a lager, we dug bunkers, we dug foxholes. And so yeah, the South Africans, we have the Quito Carnival was too far for our Air Force to be really effective. I mean, they did come in and do raids and that kind of thing, and drop bombs, and they couldn't spend much time in the air. So the Angolans had air superiority, and on a daily basis, a couple of times a day, we'd get the call Victor, Victor, which was an early warning sign that they had MiGs in the air. So you'd go to your bunker or go to your foxhole, and, you know, they would fly over. That we were obviously well camouflaged, so we never took any direct hits, but nerve-wracking nonetheless. And some guys actually really struggled with it. I mean, funny enough, during basics, I mentioned one of our instructors, a guy with the nickname of Chotes. He was on the camp, and I remember him. He was in the echelon, and he was really struggling with this whole thing of MiGs of us every day. Yeah, so let me just get myself together here. I remember one day we had, I didn't know it, but we had Chilean Air Force officers there, and apparently they were working with the communication guys, signalers and whatnot, and they had tuned into the Angolan airwaves. So that's how we got the early warning systems for the MiGs, because they could hear all the instructions, and, you know, when these guys were taking off. Quite interesting, because you're telling us that the pilots, particularly, so mainly Cuban pilots, but there were also FAPLA pilots, Angolan pilots, and apparently they used to take off, and then they would just offload their bombs and generally in the middle of nowhere, and then they would radio back, and the communication would be that they'd either hit a convoy or they'd hit a hospital or something. You know, it was absolute nonsense. That, you know, a lot of the time, most of the time, it was off target, and just, yeah. We sat, we didn't, we a lot of the time was sitting around. I'm just trying to think if we did some training up there, but anyway, we kept ourselves busy. I remember I used to go for a run around. It was a sort of a pulling into a logger. There was a track, almost like a track around the base. So I used to go for a run and just try and keep myself fit. Yeah, and just we sat around and chatted, and we eventually dug a huge bunker and built a pub in there. You know, you could go and get a few drinks in that, and then go back to your vehicle. I remember one night we were myself and the medic that had a few drinks, and we came back, and just for a joke, we sat outside the where our platoon commander was sleeping, and we just to tease him, we were whistling the Green Beret, and he got fed up and said, yeah, "Go to bed, you guys, and stop messing around." During that time, we some high-ranking officers arrived, and called a couple of us drivers out to take them to where the OP observation point was. And I don't know, I think it might have been the Chimbinga Heights, I'm not sure, but there was a lot of UNITA guys dug in trenches and foxholes. And then we went down to what I assume was the sort of where the Lomba battles had taken place, and we took them around quite a number of wreckages, you know, tanks, BTRs, those kind of things that have been shot at. And in this huge sort of Shana area was a troop of Oerlikon, I think they're called Oerlikon, anti-aircraft machine guns. And they were radar operated. I don't know what you call it, but these, I mean, they were old. I think they were probably 1965, 1970 type models. But anyway, they were reasonably effective. But they'd apparently been damaged quite a lot with all the traveling, you know, through the bush and stuff. Anyway, we watched these guys shooting, and what they'd done was about probably a kilometer away, they'd built like a model sort of cannon type thing, and then the mortars. When we had a Victor, and we knew there were MiGs coming on there, the mortars threw smoke onto this model, and I actually watched a MiG coming in to attack this thing, and as soon as the Oerlikons locked onto the MiG, he just did like a 180 whoop and straight back into the sky, and you could just see the flak bursting behind this MiG. Quite an amazing sight, but a little nerve-wracking as well. Yeah. Yeah, so as I say, not much happened. Or we're up there just the one day, I think it was a colonel then, Colonel Fashir, I think it was. He was the officer commanding of 82nd Mechanized Brigade, who we were a part of. And he was my OC for A Company, and my company commander, and during Smoke Shop. And he called us all in together for a situation report. And we'd kind of just got there, and he was just starting to talk to us, and we got the Victor call that there were MiGs on the way, but they'd obviously received it late, because I was running back to my vehicle, and halfway there, this MiG came over at treetop level, and he dropped his load about probably a couple 100 meters outside of the logger. Probably one of the most frightening experiences I'd certainly had, and just a feeling of absolute hopelessness. And we probably, if I think, we must have moved position afterwards, or just sat tight and then moved after. But he obviously didn't. It was, and so things were drawing closer to the attack that had been planned. About 5 days, must have been probably about a week or so before the planned attack day. I think we went and we fired in our weapons and that kind of thing. The 20 more rifles, Browning machine guns, obviously our rifles and stuff. And then they moved my platoon, and there might have been another element attached to us, but they moved us south. I'm not sure if it was the Quito River. It was a massive river anyway, and we were the idea was to create a diversion. And what we did was at night time, we actually had a civilian grader with us, a huge digger. So we were behind an embankment, and we'd pull our vehicles up onto the embankment, and we fired across the river, a lot of tracer fire, and then the grader would go down to the riverbed, the bank, and then and grader had spotlights going the whole trip. So I think it was sort of to give the impression that we were looking at creating a river crossing or something like that. And I think, if I remember correctly, we did that for 2 nights. And then, so it must have been a Friday, Saturday, and then on the Sunday morning, they sent the Germany, the pastor came around and to talk to us, gave us some mail, and obviously, prayed and was preaching with us. And during his sermon, we started drawing a rocket fire, stolen organs, which was really scary. So you can imagine just everyone scattering for the nearest foxhole, whatever was available. My vehicle was quite far away, and initially, I think it was Kelvin Luke. I think he interviewed. He was with us, and he said he fell into a rattle trap, which I did too. And we lay there, and I thought, no, this is not good enough. And I got up and I ran back to my vehicle, and I went to the bunker. We dug a massive bunker, and there was no one in the bunker. So I jumped into the rattle, and all the guys were sitting in the back of the rattle. And there was this nervous giggle and a lot of chit chatter. And I remember the one guy was swearing at P.W. Botha and cursing him because we were sitting in the bush being fired at, and it was all his fault. But that kind of lightened things up a bit, and as I said, a lot of nervous giggle and chatter. So we obviously had to pull out of that area, which we did, and we moved to a temporary area, and then at night we reconnected with the main brigade, pulled into the lager again. And then a couple of days later, I think it was, I might have noted it. A couple of days later was D-Day, and the instruction from Pretoria was always minimum loss of life, so they were never going to put us at risk. Well, relatively speaking, I mean, but they sent in the tanks. I think Regiment Stein, I think it was, and then they put UNITA guys on the tanks and on the ground. I don't know if they had BTRs in between, but the main force was the tanks, and then unit on the ground, and we stayed in support. And yeah, just the noise the entire day. Our artillery must, I mean, I'd hate to have been on the receiving end, because, you know, in this entire time, our artillery, you know, every day used to fire at them, and from the observation point, they could see what was going on in the base, and then as soon as they could see that things were relaxing, they'd call in the artillery and direct their fire. And then obviously it was a bit of a to and fro, but our artillery had a far, I think we could do, I don't know, 30 to 40 k's artillery fire, and so that I could reach much further than the Angolan artillery. And these, yeah, I mean, I say poor guys, but they were the enemy then, but I can't imagine what it must have been like receiving artillery fire all day, every day. But I just remember that day, we had our own rocket system, and just the noise was unbelievable. Just the entire day, and the noise from the tanks, and, you know, the battle. But it ground to a halt because there were a couple of minefields that we couldn't cross, and at the end of the day, I think the South Africans lost 3 tanks in that operation. They had apparently called in the artillery to destroy the tanks, but the command had come through that no, we must try to rescue them, but that never happened, and the Angolans eventually got hold of the tanks, and that really was a stalemate. I've tried to think about what happened, because we were still there for a couple of weeks, to the best of my knowledge. And we pulled out towards the end of April. I remember recently, like in the last 6 months to a year, listening to a YouTube clip of the officer, the guy who commanded the tanks. He was a permanent force, either a commandant or a colonel, and he commented on, he was not happy that they'd used national servicemen, a national service, like not a national service, a civilian force, to go in, you know, on a big attack like that. And there was also there's been so much written about this attack. I know one of the issues was, you know, we went in on the same axis, you know, for a third time. This was the third attack on Quito, and the reasoning behind that, and I think apparently all the instructions came from Pretoria, but I know the guys on the ground didn't really agree with a lot of what was going on. Yeah, just and that was it. When we eventually moved out, I don't know if it took us a day or two. We moved down to an area just on the Angolan side of the border, where they set up a camp, and we got refreshments and change of clothing, and they had entertainment for us. They had a couple of psychologists come in, and we did sort of an hour session with them, with the whole section, but the guys were really all the guys really wanted to do was get home, and you know, we weren't interested in talking to psychologists at that stage of the game. Yeah, so that was the end of that, and then we after about, I think probably there for about 2 days, we drove back across the border, and I'm not sure we went to Oshavela first or straight back to Grootfontein, but we did drop off the vehicles in Grootfontein, and then we flew back to Bloem, and then same story, you know, back to Civvy Street and back to normal life. I do remember getting back after 4 months after the camp, really just hating the sound of jets, Boeings and stuff, and to this day, things like crackers and fireworks make me angry. I just, I feel uncomfortable around it. Yeah, and so just to share a bit about my personal life, I got back, back to working life, and I still lived in shared houses with friends for a number of years, and I got married quite late. I only got married at the age of 34, 93. And in that same year, I got married. I bought a house, and I went into business on my own, which was a hell of a lot to do in 1 year, and I think it took its toll. 4 years later, in 97, I closed that business, and I was unemployed for a couple of years, a couple of months. Sorry, and it was in May of that year, 1997, that I got invited to a local church, and I just really felt the power of God, and gave my life to Christ, and came across what I call a Christ follower. And since then, yeah, I must say, from about the year from 2000 onwards, I struggled with depression, anxiety, changed jobs a lot, sometimes of my own volition. Other times I got retrenched, and some of the times, not just retrenchments, but obviously they wanted to get rid of me. So retrenchments was the easiest way to do it. And life was a real struggle, and I wasn't in a good place. In 2019, I'd had enough of everything, and I was struggling, and my excuse me, yeah, my marriage was not great, and a couple late that year, late 2019, a couple from our church stood up and gave a testimony of their life, and they'd been to America and to visit an organization called Celebrate Recovery, and they brought everything back with them, and they started, with the church's blessing, they started Celebrate Recovery for the first time in Cape Town. And so I've been doing working with the Celebrate Recovery program for the last 2.5 years. And just to give you some insight, if you're happy with that, Chris, Celebrate Recovery is a 12-step program similar to Alcoholics Anonymous, Drugs Anonymous, and the difference is that our higher power is God, and we worship Jesus. And we do the 12-step program. There are 12 steps that we follow, and each of our 12 steps have biblical comparisons. We also have 8 principles that we follow, and they also have biblical comparisons. And if you don't mind, I'll just read you one or two. Okay, so just to give you an idea, the 12 steps, which anybody who's done 12-step program would recognize. Step 1 says, we admitted we were powerless over our addictions and compulsive behaviors, and that our lives had become unmanageable. And the biblical verse that goes with that in our recovery is from Romans 7:18, and it says this: I know that nothing good lives in me, that is in my sinful nature, for I have the desire to do what is good, but I cannot carry it out. just to give you an idea of one of the 8 principles. Also, principle 1 says, I realize that I'm not God. I admit that I am powerless to control my tendency to do the wrong thing and that my life is unmanageable. And the biblical verse there is from Matthew 5:3, and it says, happy are those who know they are spiritually poor. And really, the way it works is coming to the realization that I that I am a sinner, and I have fallen short of the glory of God, and I cannot live this life on my own. I need Christ in my life. I need friends in my life that I can talk to, friends that I can be accountable to. And it's about working the steps, attending the meetings, and dealing with all the issues. You know, my main reason for joining this thing was my struggle with depression, and which is a reality. It's a medical condition, and I take medication for it. But what's come out of it is that I have many issues that I haven't really ever dealt with, and those are, I'll tell you what they are, just some of them. Issues like anxiety, fear of failure, anger, PTSD, not just from the army, but from childhood, procrastination, job loss is a big issue, low self-esteem, and many other issues. And so what happens when you start working the steps is that you start dealing with all of these things. And not because you work through each one of them, but not only that, you learn to lay it down before the cross, literally. You know, to say, Lord, this is what I'm struggling with, and working through it, and I cannot do this on my own. And it's learning to accept that and to draw closer to God in terms of daily prayer, daily reading, and just worshiping Him and learning to have a relationship with Him. And that has been so powerful. One of the other things that we do is you do an inventory of yourself and everybody in your that's been a part of your life, and then you do a spiritual inventory about, you know, where your walk is with Christ, and we're all at different areas with our personal walks, and and I can say that since I've been doing the steps, I've generally become calmer. There's still a lot that I'm working on. My wife still loves me, thankfully. And by doing the step study, I've come to learn that I cannot do this on my own. Also, Celebrate Recovery is a safe space. Anonymity and confidentiality are priorities, and so it's like AA and those other things. It's a safe space for you to come and open your heart and without fear of anybody talking about you or sharing it and that kind of thing. And that's really it, Chris. Thank you.
Thank you, Dennis. I was about to ask you a question, but I think you might have answered it.
Yeah.
When you met that girl in Stellenbosch, the internet started packing up. But you did say then afterwards you were not married. I suppose you just broke up.
Yeah, no, single, yeah.
But you're now a man who has your own business. Can you tell me about it?
Yeah, I got retrenched in May 2017, and then I helped a guy who had set up an online business supplying timber and other products. And then, of course, COVID hit, and things between us didn't sort of work out. And I thought, well, you know, why not just do this thing on your own? So I left him and I started my own beginning of 2020, January 2020. So it's been hard work. You know, I'm not technically minded. I don't know the internet and all of its stuff. like the kids do, my kids do, but I've learned a few hard lessons, but I'm getting there, you know, learning to advertise on Google and then Instagram, Facebook, all this other stuff. Yeah, it's been interesting. So it's tough. It's been a tough time. And I think like a lot of industries, the industry itself has been struggling, you know, with shortages, particularly with imports. That sort of thing has affected it a lot. So yeah, but hopefully we're coming out of it.
Well, we're definitely going to leave the links, you know, for your
Yeah.
business. So if people want wood or timber, you know who to contact. I keep on saying it on Legacy. Gents, we have to work with each other. We have to take hands. No one else is going to take care of you.
Yeah.
We really have to start working with each other. There's no other way. You support the guy who have the same beret as you.
Yeah,
It's
100%.
as simple as that. That's the way I see it. But tell me, this recovery, this program,
Yeah.
the wounded people, wounded in the mind. There's
Yep.
many of us, me included. I'm not normal. I'm not.
Mhm.
I said to Steve here once, who noticed Crooksholder, I said, Steve, you know, I would sometimes sit and I just cry, and I don't know why. I don't know why, and the extreme anger and things like that. And of course, we have Frans van Staden, our psychologist here to help, the Friendly Battalion company commander. But this one of yours, where can we get hold of him? If there's somebody who's interested and needs some help.
I'll send you a link. I'll send you a link for South Africa. And then for anybody who's overseas, there are in 30 countries around the world. And it's so the main website is celebraterecovery.com, www. It's massive in America. I mean, they're into to all areas of life, into prisons, you know, into everything. So it's been a great course. The course has been running for 30 years. And the guy who kind of was involved in starting it was a recovering alcoholic, and he actually went to his pastor with this and said, listen, and the pastor prayed about it for a couple of months, and then the pastor put the biblical comparisons together for the 12 steps and the principles. And it's just obviously grown from that. But really, you know, if I can just say to anybody out there, you cannot do this on your own. If whatever you're struggling with, you've got to pull someone alongside and personally come to Christ. Yeah, that's my message.
I think it's the best message possible. Just a week ago, I recorded the Port Elizabeth parade of the third generation, which is us. And I can tell you, I was quite touched. And by the time this video comes out, this parade video would have been the day before, we hope. So if you haven't watched that, please go and do so, because I've realized something. There are people like us out there, a great many of them. And so we need to get together. We need to go to these parades. We need to join the South African Legion or the MOFs or the associations. Then at least you have people who understand you, you know.
Yeah, for sure.
Because civilians will not understand you. They will think there's something wrong with you. There's nothing wrong with you. I just want to say that too. It is the normal happening which will happen to you, to any human being after you've done what you've done and gone through what you've gone through, and then come back without any gratitude. Yeah.
Now, every single person I know, certainly whether it's a small or a big issue, has an issue, and it, you know, it can be dealt with.
So it's one of the most greatest statements I've ever heard, that everyone's got an issue, great or small. But tell me, Dennis, is this program, does it cost money? Do you have to pay?
No, you don't. The only thing you pay for is the book, but has the lessons and the step study. And in South Africa, that costs, it's 100 Rand. It's just that without the book, you can't do the step studies because it's got a lesson, and then there's a set of questions that you work through. And yeah, so what you do is there's a Thursday night. Our general meeting night is a Thursday night, and that's for anybody and everybody. And once you become part of that and you feel that this is the right road to follow, then you join what they call a step study, and that's a group of people, and there are 25 lessons, and it can take up to a year. So at the moment we're doing that on Zoom because of everything, and so we meet on a Monday evening for 2 hours, and we do the step study. So it's commitment. You've got to commit to doing it. Yeah, that's it. I mean, because it's a ministry, they do take offerings if you would like to donate, but there's certainly no, if you don't doesn't cost you a cent. No, you just need to pitch up. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. I mean, I think that would be a question which most people would ask. So if I understand,
sure.
It's for free, but if you have a bit extra and you feel you benefited, then please donate. Let's help these people.
Yeah.
And now I've got you a last question. Looking back, you had no choice. I mean, you were a national serviceman. You either went to the army or you went to jail, or you ran out of the country.
Yeah.
It was as simple as that. It's as simple as with the camps as well. When those papers arrive or the phone, there's no way in the world that you can actually say, no, I don't think I'm going. No. You will.
No,
There will be a reaction to that.
Gotcha.
So you've done your patriotic duty.
Yeah.
Now there's the stem of South Africa, the national anthem, which says, ons sal lewe, ons sal sterwe vir jou, Suid-Afrika.
Yeah.
We took that seriously.
Yeah, we did.
And I spoke to a youngster the other day, and he was sort of laughing, and I said to him, you don't get it. For us, an oath actually means something. We were proud to wear the uniform. So looking back, Dennis, we're not youngsters anymore. You're a bit older than me, but do you have any advice for the young people? If there should be a war coming, or looking back on your life, if you have some life experiences?
Yeah, it's a difficult question. I mean, I think in the current country, I don't know what I would advise, because it's a bit of a mess. But certainly, in the environment we find ourselves in, I think we were, a lot of us bitched and moaned, but we were generally committed. We grew up in a disciplined environment, so we understood discipline. Of course, there was always the odd person who struggled with it, but by and large, we all understood discipline. In terms of life, I think if there's something that if there's something that you really desire, I think you got to go for it. Don't necessarily do the right thing. Do what's on your heart, and something that you're going to enjoy working with and for the rest of your life, because it's a lifelong process. It's pointless accepting a job in an environment that you're going to hate and be unhappy with every day. Find something that you enjoy. That's anything I think I would say. Yeah.
Dennis, I just want to say to you, thank you from Legacy. I want to thank you for your nice comments, your positive attitude which you have on the channel. As you people know, I'm obliged by law to read every single comment. And if I don't like your comment, or I think it's racist, or I think you're attacking our guests, or I think you perhaps had a bit too few beers, I'm going to ban you. I have no choice. I'm not going to be held legally responsible for your crap. I can't be. But Dennis is one of these guys who actually write wonderful comments there. I want to thank you and thank all of you for listening here. And I say again, you were not unimportant. Don't let people tell you that. With Legacy, we can see this. We can see that the people are watching what you guys did. More than 5 years every month. they're watching on Legacy. 51,000 hours every month they're now watching, and it's just growing, which means to me people are interested. So that story of us, being like unimportant, you were just a troepie daar, ons gee nou nie om wat jy gedoen het. Now that's nonsense. So the time is you have to come and speak to me. Get hold of me, come and speak to me. Don't let your story die with you. And if you know about people like this church who's helping the veterans, please bring them to me. Tell them to come and speak to me. Perhaps we can give them exposure. I cannot guarantee anything. I don't guarantee anything. But at least we can make people more aware of the assistance which is out there. So thank you for all of you for listening here. Dennis, thank you. I look up to you. Everybody I spoke about, you in particular in your own regiment in 6-1 Mech said to me, you're a wonderful guy, a wonderful comrade, and they really like you. So until we meet again, God bless.
Thanks very much, Chris. Thank you. Thanks and goodbye. Thanks for your effort.